this down here. This definition is from the Zondervan Bible dictionary. See, I was talking to Vince, right, about something I was listening to a guy speak about the Quran and how the Quran talks about the jinn and the different kinds of jinn and how some of the jinn are considered hairy men. And I was wondering if just to throw it off him, what do you think about that? Could they be what we call the Bigfoot? And that could be why we never found the body of a Bigfoot, why they don't find too many footprints of the Bigfoot. Because I gotta say, they claim they did find footprints, but they don't find too many of them. And so I was wondering oh, there he goes again. If the hairy ones, the jinns that they talk about, could it be Bigfoot? And you take the jinn, the idea of a jinn being a genie, right? And when the jinn is granted his 3 wishes, it's released, but it doesn't lose its supernatural powers, right? Or its capabilities. And I'm like, what happens when those jinn? What happened if that jinn, if it, this version of the jinn, the Bigfoot, the hairy man that they call it, what happens if it mates with a person, a woman? You always hear the stories that, like out in Washington State, how the Native Americans won't let women go into the woods unaccompanied by men because these things are supposed to be known for grabbing women and killing men. So they're taking the women for reproduction purposes. So what happens when they mate with them? Are their children half jinn, just covered with hair, and half human? Would you really think about it? That's almost like the real definition of a human, right? Something else hewed itself into man. And are they soulless? Are they soulless beings? And we were just talking about that, and that led to it somehow led me back to the conversation oh yeah, that's what it was. Because that conversation led me to recall when I was at a Christian camp growing up, and I was like 13 or 14, and I accepted that contract of the Lord's Prayer, and I felt something leave me. I felt light. I felt a weight lifted, and that they talk about was lifted off me. And I was like 12, 13. I didn't know any better. I didn't know any of this. I didn't know who we were. I never even heard about Afro-Asians, and the Hebrew language is a Afro-Asiatic language. I only know what I was taught, from a Christian perspective. So he told me to look up this definition in the Zondervan Bible dictionary, the definition here of exorcism. Let's see, exorcism: expelling of demons by means of magic charms, which we see that, the crucifix, right? Spells and incantations, that's their prayers and their little prayer books that they read. It was common practice among ancient heathens. In Acts 19, verses 13 through 16, the profane use of Jesus' name was a mere spell. Was punished. When the demons possessed men turned on the would-be exorcists. These vagabond Jews were pretenders. Christ, however, implies that that some Jews actually cast out demons in Matthew 12 and 27. So right there, seeing that they're saying the name Jesus is a spell. These, from this perspective, then it starts to make sense, right? Not only was I offered a contract, I accepted the contract, right? And now I put a spell upon myself, unknowingly but effective nonetheless. Because I talked about how, as I got older, you know, I still felt the guilt from breaking the Ten Commandments, from lying, from stealing, and things of this nature. I still feel the guilt of that stuff, and it wouldn't make sense. I'm like, wait a minute, if I'm with Jesus, it's supposed to be all rosy. All I've ever heard in church was that, you know, once you accept Jesus into your heart, the sinning doesn't stop, but there's somebody to take away the sin, right? And one of the things they always told you is like, oh, when God looks down and he looks at you, he doesn't see you anymore. He sees Jesus. And it's like, wait a minute, that's like a deception. That's like a disguise. It's like wearing a mask, right? Something about this just isn't right. And I remember as I got older, I would work at these camps as a counselor. I remember them telling us, hey, don't tell people that they'll feel a weight lifted off of them, or they'll feel a certain way, because they'll expect that when they say the Lord's Prayer, and if they don't feel that way, then it doesn't. They'll think it doesn't work, and now they won't say the Lord's Prayer. So basically, I was participating in a con, if you think about it, right? Because if I'm telling people, oh, this was my experience, and they try it and it's not their experience, and they say, hey, this is garbage, right? Now you don't have somebody that can potentially convert to Christianity and give themselves over to Jesus, who seems more and more this Jesus isn't Jesus, it's in fact Lucifer. So it answered a lot, but it also made me feel even more shameful that that potentially I made a contract with Lucifer, or accepted a contract with Lucifer, and that's a reality I have to face. It's not a reality I like, but it's a reality I have to face. So, and there's a movie. I posted my thoughts on this movie, but YouTube, because of copyrights, even with me, fair use and explaining what I've seen in this movie, they still put a block on it, so it can't be seen within the United States. Even though I declare that I live in North America, it cannot be seen within the United States. Even though I declare that I live in the Promised Land, it still declares it cannot be seen within the United States. So it's posted, it's on my channel, but people within the United States can't see it unless you go and actually watch the movie. So I'm gonna put the movie in the link, because the thing I just felt that I took away from it was that, and it's all in the beginning. Just watch the beginning. You don't have to go too far. I was trying to watch movies with my older sons, and I had to stop because I don't know, there's something about the barbarian stuff. It still grips me, and I pay attention to this stuff during that age. And so I'm watching this movie, and I had to stop it because there was foul language in there for a movie for children. Go figure, right? But what I want to point out is the beginning of this movie. It talks about the god Crom, the god that Conan the Barbarian's always calling upon, right? And it talks about his sword, which I thought was interesting, right? Because it reminded me of that TV show Robin Hood, the Hooded Man. And in that TV show, there was 9 swords given to 9 men to go about and fight demons to set the world right? So people could live without monsters and things of that nature. But here was what the weird part was. When these 9 swords were brought together, when the evil forces were able to bring these 9 swords together, they brought them to a monastery where the priestess put them in a well, and by under the certain moonlight, and by doing that, it invoked Lucifer to bring them out of water, right? Which then also made my mind think about, was it Lucifer's kingdom under the sea? So, a lot of things were going on when you see this. And so I'm thinking about this sword, and I'm like, what's the significance of these 9 swords? Are they like the jewels that fell off of Lucifer, or the dragon, when he fell, right? And people say all these 9, the jewels that fell off of him are what technology, different forms of technology. And when they're gathered, they start to push technology forward. I don't buy that, but I've heard that theory. I thought it was interesting when Lex did that video about I want to say it was 9 stones, but I might be wrong. But the stones that were scattered for these tribes, and people are going on these quests to try to find these stones and bring them all back together, right? There was a reward for that. So And it goes, and like I said, it's just the beginning of the movie, the beginning scene, because they talk about Crom, defeating a demon, and when he defeated a demon, though, he was pierced through the heart. Well, where we heard about that before, right? And but it says for 7 days he bled out instead of 3 days, right? Or the hours it took for him to bleed out, or the Jesus story. For Crom, it took him 7 days for him to bleed out. While he bled out, the barbarians drank his blood and gained supernatural power. I'm like, oh, all they need to do is eat his flesh, right? But they don't tell you that. They don't tell you if they ate Crom's flesh or not in this movie. So I was like, yeah, too many comparisons. And then if you look real close, the cape that Crom is wearing, right, in these beginning scenes of this movie, he's literally wearing a crucifix. He has a Jesus piece on. A man with his arms stretched out, his feet together, holding his cape together all around his neck. I'm like, this is too familiar for it not to be important. I mean, it's got to be important to them because they keep showing us this Crom and Conan story over. I did the video on, was it Conan the Barbarian in Ice Age? How Conan and would be Manny the Woolly Mammoth. How Sid the Sloth is the sidekick that he has, the dwarf sidekick that he has. The squirrel that doesn't speak is the mute that goes along with Conan. Diego, the saber-tooth, is the only melanated man that's there with Conan. And I'm forgetting somebody else. I can't think of it, but they keep with the storyline. I mean, Conan has a daughter, and the mammoth has a daughter. Just keeping in line with that. The only thing, and then the child, right? In the beginning, the first Ice Age, they have to bring the child through a pass to get it to its people. Well, in the story of Conan, he has to take this child that's anointed to be the embodiment of the god Crom, who's then taken to witches to be raised until the world needs him, they say. So, I mean, like I said, there's something to that. And this was like the first time I've actually seen someone focus on Crom and not Conan. So I thought it was interesting. But like I said, YouTube, copyright. So I'll post it in the link